Welcome to the fifth lecture in software testing. As I noted before, the purpose of my lectures are to give you a general understanding in software testing and also to try to make it quick. Today's lecture is going to be the problem report. Let's start with a definition of problem report. It's a document that describes a defect detected by the software tester. The purpose of the problem report is to state the problem as clearly as possible so that the developer can reproduce the defect and resolve the issue. It's basically how a software testers document an error. So let's talk about the characteristics of a problem report. So it has to be written. That means that no matter how small the problem, you always open a problem report. Don't do something like, well, it's really a small problem and hey, we're going to fix it. Nobody's going to let that go on, so you don't need to document it. That's incorrect. Every problem report, no matter how small, you document it. Then it has to be numbered. It has to be numbered because once open report is open, then has to be under configuration control. It has to be simple. By simple, I mean that you put in one error per problem report. Don't add more than one, because what usually happens is you put two errors in a problem report, then one gets fixed, one doesn't, and then the problem report is closed and one of the errors stays open. So just keep it simple. Has to be understandable. This is not the story of your life. You just have to say, I did step 1, step 2, step 3. This is what happened, period. Reproducible. That means that once you write the steps of how the error happened, then follow the steps that you wrote in your PR to make sure it will get you there. Non-judgmental. Yes, state what happened. I this item, I inputted this happened. Don't state that this happened already all over the place and this is not a good program. There's no need to say that. You basically, what you're doing is telling somebody your baby's ugly. There is no need to do that. So now I'm going to go through the actual problem report and what you usually find in one of those documents. First, the header, followed by report type, severity, the fault description, assignment information, who's going to resolve it, a resolution status, and disposition information. So let's get going with each of the items. So let's start with the header. Now you can think about this is you're going to put an input to a database. That's kind of a way to look at the problem report. So you have the company name, of course. Then classification is going to be confidential, secret, top secret, or public. You have to make sure that only the right people can see a type of error for many reasons. Report number, like I mentioned before, that's usually, if you have a database, that's something that's going to happen automatically. You have to have that problem report under configuration control. Make sure that they don't disappear. Then we have the program name, release information, version. What you want to make sure that it's very clear what is that you were in what version, in what program, what you were testing when the fault error was discovered. Okay, that's the header. Now let's go to report type. So there are kind of 5 types of reports. It can be a coding error. That means if basically that would be a general error, most of the errors. So if you put in number 3 and you expected a 5 and a 2 came out, well, there was some kind of an error, probably coding error. Design issue. A design issue would be something like the program, the application met all the requirements. However, you notice that it's very hard to input a number because the box where you're supposed to press is just too small. So even though everything meets the requirements, this really is not correct. So not only you are supposed to find errors, but you also can decide that when they design this stuff, they did not do it correctly, because physically you cannot access that for some reason. A suggestion: well, maybe you looked at the colors they use, and they use a blue, and you said, well, a yellow would look much better. Documentation. So you looked at the documentation, and it really doesn't state the steps to get to the program. For example, you could say, well, to make this work, I need to press button 1, 3, and 5, and the documentation say press button 1 and 3 and should work. Well, the documentation is incorrectly, because you need to press one more button. Hardware. In that case is, for example, if you're running your tests and for some reason you lose your network connection, and that's happening a couple of times. So you say, you know what, this is really a hardware problem, not a problem with the actual software. So the idea here is that you have to help when you say, what kind of report this is, and that helps when people are going to assign it to somebody. And this is, yes, of course, the 1 through 5. These are just examples. Every industry would have their type of reports. Next, we go to severity. I put in here three types of severity. One is fatal, and by fatal I mean is an error that if you have this error, you say, you know what, our testing is done. We cannot continue testing, because if this doesn't work, anything that we do from now on is going to be suspect, or maybe just fail also. So this is important enough that needs to be fixed before we continue. Next one is a serious type of report, which says, we'll continue testing, but you need to get this fixed really quick, because eventually it's going to have an impact on the results we're getting from additional tests. And finally, I have a number 3, which is minor, which basically states that, okay, you need to fix this, but it's not going to have any impact on the rest of our testing program. And let me repeat this again. This report severity, that's the stuff that I made up. So your organization is going to have to decide in what severity they use. Next, fault description. So basically, you're going to put in a problem summary. The left light does not work as expected. Then, can the problem be reproduced? You can say yes. Then you would put in the steps to reproduce it. You push this button, then you type this input, and this is the outcome. Now, you may also put a suggested fix. But now, coming back to the problem reproducible, you can say no, but we've noticed that it's intermittent. That happens between 5 and 10 times we run the function. So that's why you would have here a problem that is non-reproducible. And then you put, of course, the name of who wrote the problem and the date. Next, assign information. So this problem report has to be assigned to some organization that's going to actually fix it. So we have functional area. The name of a person is going to be assigned to it, and whatever comments you need. And then the organization itself is going to put a priority 1, 2, and 3, and they may decide that we're going to resolve first 90% of the priority 1 before we start on priority 2. And once priority 2 we have 50% of priority 2, we may look at priority 3, because they have some kind of equation to show how they are going to resolve the priorities, and they may have 10 priorities or whatever priority they need. Resolution status. Now this is really interesting. So resolution status, I have 5, which is fixed. That means that the design group got the program and they actually resolved the issue. Irreproducible, that means the design group got the problem report and they tried to reproduce it. They did everything you said, they follow your comments, they did it 10 times, they were not able to reproduce it. As designed, that means the documentation needs to change because this what we design is correct. Can be fixed is you discover a problem and we are in deep trouble, we're not going to be able to fix it. Fifth would be need more information. So you provided a PR, but it wasn't, they did what you suggested, but it's not clear. Well, it's actually not clear what you how to reproduce the problem report. And now we go to status. So I put 1 through 5 status. 1 is open. And now the status on my next chart, I'm going to explain how that works. Open means somebody wrote the PR. Pending means that that PR has been assigned to somebody. Defer means that that problem report is not going to be resolved for this release. Withdraw means the design group, the software organization that put out the PR found that they made a mistake in the steps, so they're going to withdraw it. Close, the PR got fixed by the design organization and got retested by the software organization, and everybody's okay. So let's go back. Let's continue with this resolution status. So resolution status, as I noted, so we have it gets open. Now, once it gets open, it's set to pending. Pending means that somebody is assigned, somebody is responsible for the issue. Now, from pending, it can go to reproducible. The fellow that is responsible for the resolution and the design organization says, hey, with the information you gave me, we're not able to reproduce it. Or it can go as designed. That's the way it's supposed to work. We'll have to fix the documentation. Or they just go ahead from the design organization just fix the issue. Or from pending, it could go to I need. The design organization needs more information to be able to reproduce the error. Or it can go to we cannot fix it. Now, from pending, it can also be withdraw or defer. Never got fixed, we just defer it. Now, if something is irreproducible, then it can be closed. If it's as designed, we can also close it. And if it gets fixed, we close it. Okay? So that's kind of the idea of how things flow. So let me go ahead and go through this chart where I'm going to actually go through the flow chart of how the problem report phases. And as I go, I'm going to explain why this is so important. So in green is going to be the test organization. In light brown is going to be the software organization functions. In red is going to be the change board. The change board is a group of management from the software organization, from the design organization, and some program management. That's composed of a change board that are going to decide things. And then I'm going to talk about the problem report phase. Now the phase is going to be important because that's what management is going to be looking at to see how the project is coming along. So let's get going. So first everything starts with executing a test. Did the test pass? And if the answer is yes, then we stop, we are done. Now, if the test fails, so it passed no, then we create a problem report. Now, after the problem report is created, it's set to open. So basically, the management can look at the database of problem report and see how many problem reports are open. That means that they've been opened, but they have not been assigned to anybody. Then, once it gets open, then that problem report goes to the change board where it gets assigned. So management and the software and the testing organizations, and they assign the problem report to somebody with a name. And then once it's been assigned, the problem report is set to pending. So you can imagine that you have a database with all these problem reports, and management asks, okay, how many have been open and how many have been set to pending? That means, okay, we have so many open reports that they need to be assigned to somebody because they are never going to get, nobody's going to be worked. So in that case, they could go and find out what's going on with the change board that things are not being assigned to. Or they can see, okay, how many problem reports we have pending. That means they are in work. Okay. So now, once they get pending, they go to the, so this is the test organization. This is, like I noticed, the phase. Then we have the change board, and then we go to the light brown, which is the design organization. So they get, and the first thing they do is they are going to assign a priority, because they're getting all these problems and they have to figure out, okay, how we go about managing this. So they must set up a priority. Then the question is it reproducible? So if it's not reproducible, then they just go ahead and set the problem report to close. If it's reproducible, then the next question is whether or not they need more information to resolve it. If they need more information, then yes, then it's going to go to the design organization here in green, that they have to provide the additional information. So they would provide the initial information, then they would go back to, do I need more information? And then it would just follow this flow. I want to put that because then the thing gets too complicated, this flowchart. So okay, so do they need more information? If the answer is no, then the question is this as designed? Okay, it's just happened that the specifications are incorrect, or they're going to change the specification to make it work like this. So then as designed, if the answer is yes, then the phase gets set to close. So here we can see where we had management getting data from the database on number of PRs open. Okay, of those open, number of PR in pending, and how many have been closed. So they can see how they can get a feeling of how many are being open, how many are being pending, how many are being closed. So let's keep going through our phase. So as designed, no, this is not how it's supposed to work. So then the next question is, can it be fixed? Now, if the answer is no, it cannot be fixed, then it has to go back to the change board for this position. What it amounts to is we have an issue that we cannot fix, and maybe that they have to re-architect the whole program, because they must fix this, and that's going to require major management attention. So that would be the change board. Next, can it be fixed? The answer is yes. So then the other question is, okay, it can be fixed, but should we fix it? Is it maybe something, it's a functionality that we really don't need for this release, so then we want to defer it? Yes. And then once we refer it, it goes back to change board, where they're going to decide to assign it to a future release. But if you're deferring something, you better make darn sure that stuff is going to, well, you're never going to have that functionality, or you're going to defer it to a future release. But of course, management and the change board are the ones that are going to decide where to assign it to. Now, is it deferrable? The answer is no. Then we fix then it has to be fixed by, it's not deferrable, so then it gets fixed by the design organization. Now from there, it goes to the first thing is we set the problem report phase set to fix. So now management can see how many are opened, how many are open. That means that, hey, they must be assigned because they have not been worked. How many are in pending that are in work, how many have been closed, and how many are set to fix. That means that they need to be retested by the software organization. So they can say, okay, so we have a whole bunch set to fix, but now, so we need to put the pressure on the test organization because there are too many set to fix that haven't been retested. So set to fix, then the test organization, here in green, as I noted, runs a regression test to verify they got fixed. If it gets, the question is, did it pass the regression test? Regression test is just a fancy word for retest. Did it get passed? Yes. Then once it gets past the regression test, then we set to close. Now, if the regression test, well, they thought they fixed it, but they actually haven't fixed it. The test organization ran the test and no, you did not fix it. Then if the case is no, then it goes, sets again to pending. Okay, so I hope so far you've got an idea of how important the getting the problem reported correctly into a database is, because that's used by management to gauge how your project is coming along. Okay, so let's go to the, so that's the resolution. So let's go to the final part of the problem report, is disposition information. So in the disposition information is, you has to say the name of who resolved it and the date, then the name of who retested and the date, and then whether or not it was deferred, or it just say who decided to defer it. I mean, maybe it didn't get resolved, so you don't need these two, and it just deferred, yes, so then you would not need to put this information if it was not tested. So the different shots that I showed you is what you would actually find in your database once you find the error, the inputs, and then as the designers get to the different phases, they would actually, when they fix it, they would actually go to the database and change the state once they get things done. So let me go back here. So what I have here is the test organization sets to open, then the change bar, the only one that are authorized to set this to pending, Then once it gets here, the only ones authorized to fix would be the design organization, and then to close at this stage, that would be, or any from here, that would be the testing organization. So anyhow, this is the disposition information, and now let's talk about problem report statistics. The reports are important because it helps management understand the overall project status. Okay, very important for your management, so they can follow the status. The problem report trend reflects the total number of bugs that the team has opened and closed over time. So here you have that management can see how many are open and how many are closed at any period of time. But they also, it shows if bugs discovery and resolution rates are declining toward the end of the project as expected. So not only they know the current number of open and closed, but also they can see in time as how the thing is progressing. So you would hope that as time goes, the number of problem reports open decreases and the number of problem reports closed increases. So you can see those numbers, those status, and see how things are behaving. So anyhow, that gets me to the end of this lecture. So today we discussed the problem report. We talked about the header, which is the company information, then the report type, the severity, how we describe the fault description, then how we assign it to the different organizations, the resolution and disposition information and how that flows. And finally, I talked about the problem report statistics, how important that is to your management. This is. Let me emphasize this. This is a very important management tool. It's very important that this reflects at all times, is up to date, so management knows how your program is progressing. So anyhow, thank you for taking the time to listen to my lecture. Next lecture, I'll be talking about the actual how you write your test case, the actual what goes inside the test case, and the test logs. So I hope you'll take the time to listen to my next lecture, and I also put this in YouTube, so you can subscribe and get notification when I put out the new lectures. So anyhow, happy testing. Bye bye.